The View has survived 27 seasons of chaos. Nothing prepared them for this. In nearly 2 decades as moderator of The View, Whoopi Goldberg has seen it all. Political screaming matches that made national news, celebrity meltdowns that broke the internet. So when Prince Harry walked onto that stage with contempt in his eyes and condescension in his voice, everyone assumed Whoopi would handle it. She always handles it. What nobody anticipated was how thoroughly Harry would misread the situation, treating Whoopi Goldberg like she was some morning show lightweight, instead of a woman who'd fought her way up from the projects, conquered Hollywood, and spent 50 years refusing to take anybody's nonsense. But Harry kept going, dismissing questions, talking down to hosts, treating every attempt at conversation like an insult to his royal dignity. The moment everyone would remember came 11 minutes in, when Harry suggested that Whoopi couldn't understand the pressures he faced. Whoopi leaned back, smiled that smile that always precedes destruction, and said 6 words that would dominate headlines for weeks. "I grew up in the projects, baby. You're going to want to see every second of this. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. We break down moments like this every week, and trust us, you don't want to miss what's coming. Notifications on. Let's go." The View studio was buzzing with its usual pre-show chaos. The production team finalizing segments, the hosts settling into their positions around the iconic table, the audience chattering with anticipation. Today's guest had generated more pre-show interest than usual. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, his first appearance on the show since the Netflix documentary. Prince Harry entered the studio with an entourage that seemed excessive. Handlers, publicist, someone carrying notes. He crossed to the table with a smile that didn't quite land, shaking hands with each host in turn. When he reached Whoopi, his grip was brief, almost perfunctory. "Welcome to The View, Harry," Whoopi said, her voice warm but her eyes assessing. "Thank you for having me." 3 words. No elaboration. No matching of energy. Whoopi registered the coldness immediately. "So let's get into it," Whoopi began, leaning forward. "Your father was just in America. State visit. Met with Trump. Big deal. You weren't on the schedule. How did that feel?" Harry's expression hardened. "I'm not going to discuss private family matters on television." "But it's not private, is it? The whole world noticed you weren't there. Your father was 20 minutes from your house." "State visits have state priorities." "And seeing your son isn't a priority?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to. The schedule said it for you." Joy jumped in, trying to soften the moment. "I think what Whoopi's getting at is that reconciliation, which you've said you want, seems like it would require actually seeing each other." "Reconciliation is a process," Harry said, his voice clipped. "Not an event." "But processes require steps," Sonny added. "What steps are being taken?" "Private ones." Whoopi's eyebrows rose. "Private steps toward public reconciliation? That's an interesting approach. Tell us more about these private steps." "I'm not going to detail family matters for entertainment purposes." "This isn't entertainment. It's conversation. There's a difference. You came here to talk. So talk." Harry's jaw tightened. "I came here to discuss my foundation work. And we'll get to that. But you've spent years making your family issues public. The book, the documentary, the Oprah interview. Why is this particular family matter suddenly private?" "Because I choose what to share and when." "Convenient timing, though. When it sells books, it's public. When it's awkward, it's private." The audience had gone quiet. The other hosts exchanged glances. This was getting heated faster than anyone expected. "Let's talk about the work," Sarah Haynes offered, attempting to redirect. "Archwell, the Invictus Games. What are you focused on right now?" Harry turned to Sarah with something like relief. "We're focused on meaningful impact, mental health advocacy, supporting veterans through sport and community." "That sounds wonderful," Sarah said. "Can you give us a specific example?" "The work speaks for itself." Whoopi leaned back in. But it doesn't actually. Work needs advocates. What has Archwell specifically accomplished in the last year? We've partnered with organizations. Partnered how? Funding? Volunteering? Lending your name? All of those things. What percentage of donations goes to actual programs versus administrative costs? Harry's face flushed. I don't have those numbers memorized. The head of any serious charity knows those numbers. I've run fundraisers. I've worked with nonprofits for decades. That's the first thing people ask. I'm not going to be interrogated about financial details. It's not interrogation. It's the most basic question anyone asks about a charity. If you can't answer it, people wonder where their money's going. Joy tried again to smooth things over. I think what Harry's saying is that the impact isn't always quantifiable. Impact is always quantifiable eventually, Whoopi interrupted. People helped. Programs funded. Lives changed. Those are numbers. If you can't produce numbers after years of operation, that's concerning. Harry stood up slightly, then sat back down. This feels hostile. This feels like conversation. Hostile would be me calling you names. I'm asking questions. There's a difference. Your questions are framed negatively. My questions are framed directly. Not everyone who asks hard questions is your enemy. Some of us just want answers. Sonny attempted to find middle ground. Harry, I think there's genuine curiosity here. Archwell has gotten a lot of attention. People want to know what it does. What it does is create frameworks for change. Frameworks meaning what? Whoopi pressed. Meetings, reports, guidelines? I've been involved in activism my whole life. Frameworks are what organizations produce when they're not producing results. That's unfair. Is it? Name one policy that changed because of Archwell. Name one program that exists now that didn't exist before. Name one concrete outcome. Harry had no immediate response. See, that's the problem. You want credit for the work without describing the work. That's not how this goes. The Netflix deal, Whoopi continued. It got downgraded. Your wife's show isn't getting renewed. The brand lost Netflix as a partner. What's happening there? Harry's voice dropped dangerously. Business arrangements evolve. That's what everyone says when things aren't going well. What actually happened? Strategic repositioning. Whose strategy? Because it looks like Netflix pulled back. That's not your strategy. That's their decision. You don't have insight into Netflix's internal decisions. I have insight into public announcements. First look deal instead of full production. Brand partnership ending. Show canceled. The pattern is clear. Joy leaned forward. Harry, I think what Whoopi's getting at is that the trajectory seems to be going in a certain direction. The trajectory is my business. But you've made it public business, Whoopi said. You signed a deal reportedly worth $100 million and talked about it extensively. Now it's shrinking, and you want privacy? That's not how transparency works. I never claimed to be transparent about business details. You claim to be transparent about everything else. The selective transparency is what people notice. How's Megan? Every wall in Harry's demeanor reinforced simultaneously. I prefer not to discuss my wife. Whoopi's eyebrow arched. At all? This interview is about me. But you're a unit. Harry and Megan. Everything's joint. The foundation, the Netflix deal, the brand. Making her off limits removes half the conversation. She's my partner, not a topic. She's a public figure who's made extensive public statements. Asking how she's doing isn't an invasion, it's basic courtesy. Courtesy that gets weaponized. By whom? Me? Right now? I'm asking how your wife is doing. That's a friendly question. Harry's face had gone red. There are rumors I should address. What rumors? The divorce speculation. It's fabricated. Our marriage is stronger than ever. Sonny looked surprised. Nobody asked about divorce. But that's what people are really asking. Whoopi cut in. No, that's what you're hearing. I asked how she's doing. You heard divorce. That tells me something. It tells you the tabloid narrative has poisoned the well. It tells me divorce is on your mind. People don't defend against accusations that weren't made. Joy tried to intervene. Whoopi, maybe we should... I'm just noting what happened. I asked a friendly question. He volunteered a divorce denial. That's interesting. Harry leaned forward, his voice rising. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Whoopi smiled. That smile that always preceded something devastating. I grew up in the projects, baby. The audience reacted audibly. Harry seemed momentarily stunned. I was on welfare. I was a teenage mother. I cleaned houses and worked in a funeral home before I got my break. I've been famous for 40 years, scrutinized for 40 years, criticized for 40 years. I know something about pressure. Your pressure isn't the same. Pressure is pressure. You think growing up black in America in the 60s wasn't pressure? You think breaking into Hollywood when nobody wanted people who looked like me wasn't pressure? You think navigating this industry for half a century without losing myself wasn't pressure? I didn't mean to diminish. You didn't mean to, but you did. You assumed that because I host a daytime talk show, I don't understand difficulty. That's the problem with how you see people, Harry. You assume your suffering is unique. It's not. Everyone's carrying something. The difference is what you do with it. Joy put a hand on Whoopi's arm. Maybe we should take a breath. I'm breathing fine. Whoopi's eyes never left Harry. What I'm not doing is accepting the premise that this man's struggles are somehow beyond anyone's comprehension. He grew up in palaces. He had security his whole life. He had access to the best education, the best healthcare, the best everything. Yes, he lost his mother. That's genuinely tragic. But he's not the only person who's lost a parent. He's not the only person who's faced media scrutiny. He's not the only person who's had family conflict. Harry stood up. I think we're done. Are we? Because you haven't actually engaged with anything. You've deflected, you've gotten defensive, and now you're leaving. That's not conversation. That's avoidance. I came here hoping for genuine dialogue, and I've been trying to have one. You won't participate. Every question about your work gets blocked. Every question about your family gets redirected. Every question about your wife gets refused. At what point do you actually talk to us? Sonny tried one more time. Harry, I think everyone here is genuinely interested in understanding your perspective. My perspective is that this has been adversarial from the start. Whoopi laughed, not cruelly, but with genuine disbelief. Adversarial? I asked about your father, your work, your Netflix deal, and your wife. Those are the softest questions possible. If those feel adversarial, the problem isn't the questions. The framing. There was no framing, just questions. You've built this narrative where everyone who asks anything is attacking you. That's not reality. That's paranoia. Harry's voice rose sharply. I am not paranoid. Then engage. Answer questions without treating them like traps. Share something real instead of press releases. Be here, actually here, instead of defending a position. I have been here. You've been performing. There's a difference. I've been in entertainment my whole life. I know performance when I see it. Harry grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. I won't be spoken to this way. What way? Directly? With questions? Like an adult who's expected to answer for his choices? That's how conversation works, Harry. It's not a monologue where everyone nods along. Joy stood up partially. Harry, please. No. Harry's voice was cold. I came here to discuss my foundation work. Instead, I've been attacked about my family, my marriage, my business, my character. This is exactly what the British tabloids do, dressed up in American packaging. Whoopi stood up slowly, the kind of standing that commanded attention. Let me tell you something. I'm not a tabloid. I'm a woman who's earned her place at this table through 50 years of work. I've won every major award in entertainment. I've fought battles you can't imagine. And I will not be compared to the people who hounded your mother." The audience gasped. "You want to talk about Diana? Let's talk about Diana. She faced real persecution. She handled it with grace. She engaged with media, even hostile media, because she understood that access requires engagement. She didn't storm off when questions got uncomfortable. She answered them." Harry's face had gone pale. "Don't bring my mother into this." "You brought her into everything. Every interview, every documentary, every chapter of your book. You've made her memory central to your public identity. You don't get to invoke her when it helps and silence her when it doesn't." Harry moved toward the exit, then turned back. "History will vindicate me." Whoopi nodded slowly. "Maybe. History will also remember this moment, when you couldn't handle The View. Not 60 Minutes, not a hostile investigation. A daytime talk show where women asked you questions, and you walked away because the questions were too hard. They weren't hard. They were inappropriate. They were basic. What has your foundation accomplished? Basic. How's your wife? Basic. Why didn't you see your father? Basic. You couldn't answer any of them. That's not my failing. That's yours." Harry walked off stage. The audience sat in stunned silence. Joy sighed heavily. "Well, that happened." Sunny shook her head. "I've never seen anyone walk off this show." Whoopi settled back into her chair. "First time for everything." She turned to face the camera, her expression mixing exhaustion with something like sadness. "I want to address what just happened, because in my nearly 20 years on this show, I've never experienced anything quite like it." She paused. "Prince Harry came here with an agenda, not to talk, to defend. Every question was treated like an attack. Every attempt at genuine conversation was blocked. I've interviewed presidents. I've interviewed criminals. I've interviewed people who had every reason to be hostile. Almost all of them could engage in basic dialogue. He couldn't." She shook her head. "He told me I couldn't understand pressure. I grew up in the projects. I was on welfare. I cleaned houses before I became Whoopi Goldberg. Don't tell me about pressure. Pressure is wondering if you'll eat this week. Pressure is raising a child alone. Pressure is breaking into an industry that didn't want you. His pressure is bad headlines in his mansion in Montecito." Joy put a hand on Whoopi's arm. "Whoopi, I'm not done." Whoopi's voice was firm. "What I saw today was someone who's so convinced the world is against him that he can't recognize when it's not. I wasn't his enemy. I was curious. I wanted to understand. He wouldn't let me. He wouldn't let any of us." She turned back to the camera. "Harry, if you're watching, and you probably are, I hope you figure out what you're running from, because right now you're running from everyone, including people who might actually help." The footage aired that day, uncut. ABC made the call to include everything. The clips that went viral were predictable. "I grew up in the projects, baby. You assumed your suffering is unique. It's not. She faced real persecution. She handled it with grace. You couldn't handle The View, a daytime talk show where women asked you questions. His pressure is bad headlines in his mansion in Montecito." Harry's team released a statement calling the interview hostile and disrespectful, reflecting the adversarial nature of American media. Whoopi addressed it the next day. "Adversarial? I asked about his foundation. I asked about his father. I asked about his wife. Those are friendly questions. He treated them like crimes. That's not my adversarial nature. That's his inability to engage with anyone who doesn't accept his narrative without question." Joy nodded. "I tried to calm things down." "I know you did, and I appreciate it. But sometimes things can't be calmed. Sometimes you just have to see clearly what's in front of you." Sunny added, "What struck me was how unprepared he was for basic questions. Like he expected us to just accept everything." Whoopi leaned back. "That's what he's used to, controlled environments, approved questions, sympathetic platforms. This is The View. We talk about what we want to talk about, and if you can't handle that, maybe don't come on. For Whoopi Goldberg, the interview became another chapter in a 50-year career of refusing to accept nonsense, proof that her legendary directness hadn't softened with age. For Prince Harry, it was another failed interview in an expanding pattern. Another host who didn't understand. Another platform that refused to provide unconditional validation. But for the millions who watched, the encounter revealed something else entirely. The difference between someone who'd earned her place through decades of work and someone who'd been given everything and still claimed to be persecuted. Whoopi had grown up with nothing. Harry had grown up with everything. And when they sat across from each other, the contrast was devastating. Some conversations build understanding, others reveal its impossibility. Whoopi had offered conversation. Harry had offered walls. And by the time he walked off that stage, everyone watching understood exactly which one of them had been unreasonable. That was something else. What do you think? Was Whoopi too harsh? Or did Harry deserve every word? If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button and join a community that gets it. Turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. Drop a like if this hit different. Share with someone who needs to see this. More moments, more breakdowns, more truth. We're just getting started.